everyone, and thanks for tuning in to episode 43 of the Matt O Scale Trainz podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rochford, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts.
Sorry, Matt.
Didn't even finish. Co-hosts. I think that's the first time it's ever happened. Co-hosts, sound off.
Matt Zuha.
And Johnny Nugent. Matt, you were so excited. You just jumped the gun. You don't even want to wait for the intro.
I did. I'm so excited, man. I'm like the Pointer Sisters over here or something.
You know what, Matt? You're fired.
It's happened. It's officially fired.
Three strikes, you're out.
For sure.
No, this is you are right on, Matt Z. This is going to be an awesome episode. And if you want to listen to all of our awesome episodes, you can on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music. I believe we're on iHeartRadio now. There's a whole bunch of new ones that we're on. If you can find a social media app that does podcasting, we are probably on it. So feel free to subscribe to us on any medium that you want to. So, of course, we have to talk about our merch. If you want something with the Matt Podcast logo on it, please feel free to hit our website link. That'll be in the notes. And if you use our code, which is MAMPOD, you will receive 10% off. Before we start, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Trainz.com. If you are looking for a great deal on used and new model railroading products and want top-notch service, then please head over to Trainz.com, where they have over 120,000 products with new ones added every day. You can also sign up for their newsletter to see newly listed and newly discounted products and receive advance notice of upcoming promotions. Now, I've been using Trainz.com myself as well as my co-hosts, and we highly recommend them to our listeners.
Now, if you're like us and you're always on the lookout for your next engine, join the Trainz Rewards program to earn points on every purchase and unlock future discounts. And if you're an avid collector and want first dibs on new items, sign up for the private card membership to get early access to new listings, earn 5 points per dollar spent, and unlock great benefits like no questions asked returns.
Now, guys, don't forget that you'll need parts to keep your engines and cars operating smoothly. And to do this, Trainz has a collection of 15,000 plus parts available on their website for any item you may need. And also, if you're interested in downsizing your collection or know someone who is unfortunately leaving the hobby, Trainz also buys collections. So head over to sellmytrainz.com to get a quote. And Trainz makes it easy to sell your collection.
Now, if you do plan on buying from them, please use our affiliate link, which is www.trainz.com/MMOP. You can also use our unique one-time promo code MMOP for $10 off a single purchase on the Trainz.com website. All right, now let's talk about tonight's episode. Well, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest. We have none other than Mr. Mike Reagan from TW TrainWorx and the MTH Parts and Sales. So, Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's Reagan, but it's cool. I'll be whatever you want me to be. Reagan, Jones, Franklin, Frank Mount, whatever you need. I'm that guy.
Well, I guess I'm firing myself now because I got the guest's name wrong. So
I'm the sole host now.
It's just you, Johnny. Oh.
Johnny, look, man, you had 42 flawless episodes, so don't get cocky.
I was only here for part of them, too, so.
Oh, well, then take whatever number you've been here for and subtract it from 42, and that's how many good ones you have a job left for. The other two guys are gone.
Oh, wow. Just like that. 1, 2, we're out, Matt. So I guess we'll just start a new podcast. So, Mike, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast here tonight. And just, people's time is precious. And we just, you were definitely on our sites to get you on here and start talking about the industry, especially with TW TrainWorx. And then, of course, obviously, the new MTH Parts and Sales.
Well, cool. I'm glad someone's looking forward to having me on board.
All right, well,
Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you a million times over.
Big thanks. This is going to be fun.
All right, well, I am just going to get started. I kind of asked this for all our guests, and this may not be applicable to you, but how did you get started in O-scale or even model railroading?
Wow. So my dad has been an HO scale brass collector for, well, heck, I don't know how long, but I can tell you at least 49 years, because that's what I was born into, was his affliction for HO scale brass. So, growing up, always had trains, was always around them. Obviously went to all the train shows with my dad growing up. And then, when I was in middle school, high school, I was into HO because, I mean, let's face it, O gauge at that time was pretty dismal in terms of selection. I mean, you had the post-war Lionel era, and you had the offerings from Lionel in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And, unless you grew up with Lionel trains as a kid in the 50s, you pretty much weren't buying Lionel. So I was an HO guy. And then, graduated high school, went to basic training, AIT, went to the Army, did the National Guard thing for a while, and quickly realized I was not a fan of civilian authority. So it became immediately apparent that I needed to work for myself. So I got a gig building a 900 square foot train layout for a guy in Canfield, Ohio. So that was my first layout building gig. And that morphed into several things. He was a land developer, and he wanted to buy this giant tract of land in Mahoning County, Ohio. And on this tract of land was a train store. And part of the deal was he couldn't buy the land unless he took the train store. So Hugh the sucker, aka me, agreed to run this train store while he developed the land. So that was back in 96. We started the train store, and that morphed into Train America Studios, which then morphed into Lionel, and from there TW TrainWorx, and then subsequently MTH Parts and Sales. So basically, to answer your question, a long series of bad decisions in rapid succession.
Okay. Gotcha.
I wonder where I've heard that before.
Well, that's because you haven't heard my story before. I'm pretty much the only guy that says that. Now, if you get Rich Foster on the podcast, he'll tell you he is the humblest guy in the train industry. That's not my line. I've just made a long series of bad decisions in rapid succession, and it's landed me here.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Let's actually head over to TW TrainWorx. Can you tell us how you got associated with them, and perhaps what you do at TW TrainWorx?
So when I got to Lionel in 2008, TW TrainWorx was doing all the display layouts for Lionel, right? They were doing the showroom layout. They did the giant layout that showed up at York and the new booth back in 2008, and was doing all of the Lionel display layouts. Jerry Calabrese grew up in New York City, and Roger Farkash grew up in New York City, and I don't know, the two of them went to school at the same high school or ate at the same Italian restaurant. I'm not really sure how it works, but that's as you go through life, you'll realize that, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So at any rate, Jerry gets a hold of Roger, and the two of them work something out, and they're making, or Roger's making layouts. So I get to my first York under the Lionel logo in 2008, and I immediately jump in and start helping them set up the layout. And Farkash is like, who are you and what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm the new service director at Lionel, and I'm helping you do your job. And that was the first time that Farkash and I had met. And so fast forward to 2016, I leave Lionel. The press release hits the news, and I get one text message from Farkash, and it says, "I'm going to Texas, Davy Crockett," and that's all it was. One text message. So I picked the phone up and I called Farkash and I said, "Well, what are you thinking, buddy?" And he says, "Well, we should join forces." I says, "All right, that sounds fun." I says, I could go back to build and train layouts again. That's where I started. So, he says, "When are you moving to Texas?" And I said, "No, I'm not moving to Texas." I says, I'm very comfortable in North Carolina. I'm not leaving. So we started TW TrainWorx East Coast. And basically, what do? We design, cut, and manufacture custom building kits. We obviously do layout design, custom layout construction and installation and maintenance. Geez, oh man, we do a lot at TW TrainWorx. Primarily, the bulk of our business is custom model railroads. Custom 3-rail layouts, or at least we try to focus on 3-rail. We've done some American Flyer, some HO, some large scale, but O gauge is really our bailiwick. So, they design and build layouts in Dallas, and I design and build layouts here in my shop in North Carolina. So what do I do? Everything but social media. From layout design to I also don't estimate. So I don't do social media, and I don't estimate. We got an estimator in Dallas that does that, and Dorsey, aka Train Dame, she does all the social media. Outside of that, I do everything else. I do design, model building, carpentry, finished carpentry, scenic painting, all the electrical, track laying, sculpting. When I say sculpting, all the carving of the mountains. That's a talent I just recently acquired within the last couple months, because up until this layout I just delivered a week ago, this past Sunday, I would tell everybody that I can't sculpt. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I had to learn the hard way. So I learned the hard way. I've got it figured out, and now I can carve. So there's pretty much nothing in the TW TrainWorx world that I don't do here in North Carolina, where everyone else is in Dallas.
Gotcha.
And I have spoken.
That is really interesting. So I have not touched the sculpting part yet. I actually have some material to start doing it. It's definitely next on my skill list, so to speak, to start doing. I'm a little hesitant for it, but I think in order to get something done, you just got to dive in and say, well, this is going to come out really bad, or it's going to come out really good, or somewhere in between. And I'll chalk it up as a learning experience, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the best free advice I can give you is, once you spend 5 to 7 hours sculpting or carving something and it doesn't look just right, don't be afraid to take your steak knife and start chipping away at it and start over, because that happens quite a bit. You're up close, you're carving away, and you step back and you're like, man, that line doesn't look good, or I don't have the right contour. So you get up there with your paint scraper and your steak knife and you start hacking it all at crap, and you start over. So that's good fun.
Gotcha. And
a little defeating, but good fun. Gotcha.
So how long does it take? And obviously you can just give us a super estimate. And so let's just say you have a 12 by 12 layout that somebody requests, right? And maybe they want a trap door in the middle or something, like to do like a moderately detailed layout. Like, what do you think? Like, how long would that take, you think?
I can tell you exactly, right? So I'm not going to do 12 by 12. So right now the next layout on deck is 10 by 30.
Okay.
Right. It's going to take roughly 2.5 to 3 months to do a 10x30 layout myself. Right.
Okay.
And now the base construction was done in Dallas to speed me up, because the last layout I just talked about delivering, that took a little bit longer. Part of my recovery from COVID and some other medical issues. But this 10x30 layout, from the construction of the tabletops all the way to completion, and this is all Ross custom switches, legacy DCS, completely scenic. I don't remember the cubic. I don't remember the cubic footage of foam that's on this carving wise, but there's two levels. There's quite a bit of sculpting, and there's a very large mountain in the middle. Roughly 482 feet of track, 36 switches, and completely ballast, completely scenic. All the structures weathered, lit, accessories operating, and flawless DCS and legacy operation. Roughly about 2.5 to 3 months to finish it.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's me, right? Okay. I mean, that's one guy doing everything. If it were in Dallas, it would probably be 1.5 to 2 months to knock it out.
Gotcha.
But there's a staff of I think 11 in Dallas, and there's a staff of 1 here in Concord, North Carolina.
And how much of, and this obviously can vary from client to client, but how much is the client's input taken in, and how much of it is TrainWorx saying, well, that's not really going to work. How about if we do this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the client input really comes in on the front end, right? We've got a questionnaire that they complete, and we try to generate a mental image of what they're looking for, right? In terms of, I like to know what type of equipment they own, so that helps me understand what type of diameters of tracks they need. Are they a semi-scale customer? Are they a scale customer? Are they a mix? Do they like animated accessories? Do they like everything to be in scale? And then, of course, you always have the customers that bring you the napkin sketch with a pencil, that to your point is 12 by 12, and it's got 96 curves on it, and the horseshoe curve, and the, Conway yards. And it's like, I don't know what world you live in, but this is really like Z scale, not so much O gauge. So there's instances like that where you've got the appetite is bigger than the real estate. And then there's other instances where, the customers just have everything, that they've got literally every accessory known to man. And, the layout just, if we were to put all those accessories on it, they would be, 6 tall. It would be the car wash would be on top of McDonald's, which would be on top of the hobby shop, which would be on top of something else. And then the steam clean and wheel grind shop, and then the back shop on top of that, all for one siding. It's like, that's not going to work either. So, some of it, I don't want to say there's a lot, but, the beauty of hiring TW TrainWorx to do your layout is we know what the pitfalls are, right? We know what not to do. So when the customer says, oh, I want to do this, we don't tell them no, but we sternly encourage them to not go in that direction, because the last thing we want to do is deliver a layout that's going to be a lemon. Right. I mean, we know what works and what doesn't work. And, my background, especially on the legacy and the TMCC and even the DCS system, I can tell a customer with absolute certainty that, this is going to work, hands down, no questions asked, reliably all the time. And, I'll give you a great example. Just about every customer that comes in, the first question, or one of the questions I will ask them is, okay, look, what do you want for a control system? Do you want legacy? Do you want DCS? Do you want conventional? And immediately the customer's like, I want it all. It's like, okay, look, I'm going to tell you how this is going to go down. We're going to build you a train layout, a very complex train layout that's command controlled. and we're going to wire it all up. We're going to put all the additional 30% more wiring in it, so you have conventional control and switch panels and on-off switches for sidings, and we're going to put all this extra work, and you're going to pay all this extra money. And within the first day of owning the railroad, every conventional train you own will never leave your shelf ever again, because nothing sucks more than running conventional trains on a command-equipped layout. Because, most of those conventional trains are AC motors. So you have 2 speeds. It's like driving in Michigan. You have stop and Mach stupid, and that's it. There's nothing in between. So, that's one of the things that's always challenging with the customers is helping them understand, your collection has all of this equipment, so you really don't need this conventional operation you had when you were 7. And here's why. And, 7 times out of 10, they don't agree with me. And 10 times out of 10, they come back and say, yeah, my conventional trains haven't left the shelf since you installed the layout. And I have spoken.
Yeah, I've seen your videos and all of your, at least all the social media stuff that you guys do, because you guys have a little bit of a Facebook presence, YouTube, and you guys just make the most spectacular looking layouts like out there for sure. Like, and I'm sure people, when they're building their own layouts, probably take a lot of inspiration. I think we all do, from obviously not just TrainWorx, but from other layouts out there. It's kind of one of the most like lucrative things of building your own layout, because it's very custom. But the great thing is people do these amazing things, and it's easy just to look at stuff that, you guys professionals have done and said, wow, they did that. Like, oh, that looks great. I'm going to encompass that on my next layout or something like that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's, the inspiration can be found from a lot of places. I look at, some of the stuff that I look at when I'm building layouts is I've got a layout that will come up after this 10 by 30. It's roughly 10 by 28, and it's going out west. And as I was developing the track plan, I had to come up with a cityscape for it. And so the first place I went is I jumped online and I looked up the Franklin and South Manchester Railroad by George Celios up in Peabody, Mass. Right? I mean, I've been a fan of his work for years. Back even before back when I had a paper route when I was like 12, Alan Keller was one of my customers on my paper route. And I don't know if you're familiar with Alan Keller, but him and Rich Melvin produced a number of VHS tapes of HO scale layouts, really, really, really nice HO scale layouts all over the country. And so, long before I was even in the business, I was, kind of tagging along with my dad and Alan and Rich Melvin back when I was 12 years old. And then watching those videos, of course. And so, I look at George Celios's layout for a lot of inspiration on those 1920s architecture and the weathering that he does. And I mean, that's kind of the stuff that inspires me when I'm looking to do something, outside of the scope of what you can buy commercially in O gauge, right? Because I've got a laser cutter here in North Carolina. We've got 2 in Dallas, and believe it or not, I can actually use Adobe Illustrator and draw up anything and cut it on the laser, turn around, build it, paint it, weather it, and looks, pretty spectacular. I think I just hurt my arm patting myself on my back, though.
Okay.
Let's not film my right shoulder now.
That's okay. Our guests can pat themselves on the back all they want on this podcast. So.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're not filming this. So I don't have to put pants on. That's perfect.
That's right. Would you say that like a 10 by 28 would be a popular dimension for somebody looking to a layout? Okay.
No, one of the things that we really strive to do is we strive not to make the reach from the edge of the layout any greater than 4 feet, right? Because anything bigger than 4 foot, you need a step stool or a ladder or something to get, up on there. So we definitely, so on that 10 by 30 layout, one of the things I did when I designed it is I made sure that all the animated accessories were within 4 foot of the edge of the railroad. Because inevitably, like anybody who's into 3-rail trains, when you're running animated accessories by themselves, they're all going to work flawlessly. Or I should say, when you're running them by yourself, they will all work flawlessly. And the minute you have anybody over is when they will fail. So, inevitably the culvert, drops down and shorts out the track, or the barrel, bounces on the rail and derails the locomotive, or whatever the case is. I mean, anyone who's been in the 3-rail long enough knows that no animated accessory works flawlessly when there is more than you in the room, period. So yeah, all that stuff has to be within a 4 foot reach. But to answer your question, like a 10 by 28, 10 by 30, those layouts are basically, those layouts have those dimensions because we were maximizing the amount of space that was available in the client's space and trying to give them everything that they wanted. Right. So, both of these customers are fortunate enough to have layouts that large. We do around the room layouts, around the rooms with a peninsula. Pretty much we try to maximize the space available without, we try, and again, this is based on the customer, we try to make it a pretty even percentage of trackage versus, structures and scenery and accessories and things like that. But, we've got a layout that we installed in Dallas that is truly 98% track and 2% structure. The scenery is in there, but okay, well, let's see. It's 80% track, 18% scenery, and 2% structures. I mean, it's so crazily overloaded with track and trains everywhere that, keeping tabs on everything requires a lot of concentration. And of course, it's all command controlled, and all the sidings can be turned on and off with the remote and wired manually, right? Or conventionally for no good reason whatsoever, because all of those conventional trains are still on the shelf. There's a common thread here. I don't know if you're picking up on it or not. If not, I'll shoot you an email afterwards and try and lay it out for you.
I gotcha. I think I'm picking it up.
I think he's,
Excellent.
maybe knock down our last episode with Proto 1.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling I'm getting here. Don't run conventional.
Well, I mean, if you're a conventional guy, I'm not knocking you. But if 70% of your collection is TMCC legacy and or DCS operated equipment, and 30% is conventional, contact Electric Railroads or MTH Parts and Sales and get you some upgrade kits and move on, or sell them, and we all know how much Proto 1 engines bring, so upgrade them.
Well, that is
true.
Perfect.
That's really true.
That's a perfect segue into MTH Parts and Sales. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what was your inspiration for that, and how did you get started with the MTH Parts and Sales?
So Mike Wolf called me up, I don't know, February of 2020, and he's like, hey, in fact, I was in Dallas at TW at the time, and he says, I got this crazy idea. What if I just take all my parts and ship them to you, and you sell them and split the profits with me? And I says, yeah, no, I'm not interested. And he's like, well, we got to do something with these parts. I've got this retirement plan planned out, and then I knew all this long before the announcement rolled out, and long story short, we just couldn't we couldn't come to an amenable agreement between the two of us. So I just kind of let it go, and it was maybe about May or so, he calls me up and he's like, look, he says, I really want you to help me with these parts. What can we do? Can you work as a consultant? And I was like, I hadn't even thought about a consultant. I said, yeah, sure, I could work as a consultant. And let me just say this before we go any further. Believe me, if there was anyone else in the industry Mike Wolf would have hired, it would have been them. But apparently there's no one out there, so it was me. We entered into a consulting agreement, and the plan was to go from July of 20 to July of 21. And my job was to create an infrastructure, much like I did over at Lionel, for inventorying the service parts. Creating basically, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was, what I built at Lionel worked so exceptionally well that they wanted the same thing. They wanted exploded view diagrams, and they wanted you to be able to search parts and photos of each part, and so on and so on. And so we started into that. We started into that agreement, and that was going well up until about November or so. And then it quickly became apparent to me that nobody on the Maryland side was actually entering any parts in the system. And so I told Mike, I'm like, hey, kind of have a problem here. The database is not getting populated, and things were the way the stars aligned. It worked out pretty well. Things were slow at TW at the time. I didn't have any layouts to build here in Concord, and so I told TW, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go on sabbatical, go help out MTH a little bit on this parts thing I'm working on with them, and everybody was agreeable to that, and so I started out, or I don't want to say started out, but I became a contractor for them, basically, renaming all of the parts in their parts inventory. I'll give you an example. There were 681 part numbers with the description motor. Just motor.
Oh my.
Okay, great. Got it. It's MTH. There's probably 5 or 6 AC motors for the pre-war stuff, and then everything else is a CAN motor. So okay, we got that much figured out. Once I drilled through all of that, and that literally took 82 hours to get through 681 motors to determine that there were roughly 31 unique motors that had multiple part numbers for the same part. So straightening out all of that stuff. The only drawback to my involvement with MTH Parts and Sales is that I'm about 30 years late to the party. So I'm basically trying to rectify 30 years of sin, which is, when it was Proto 1, we had these great exploded view diagrams, but, when we went to PS2, 5, and 3, and PS3, we didn't really keep up with it. So, I can tell you there are, I'm trying to remember now. I want to say something like 86,300 and some odd unique SKUs that MTH produced over a period of 30 years. And that accounts for every single road name on every single Rail King and Premier freight car, every HO scale car, locomotive, 1 gauge, tin plate, all of it. And that's only up until about what's the date? Maybe December of 2020. Anything done from December or January of 21 on is probably not in the system in terms of the product number. But if it's a big boy, you go to the site and you type in big boy, and you choose Rail King, Premier, HO, 1 gauge, whatever. So, but yeah, so that's kind of what that looked like in the beginning. So that's how I got involved. And then, once again, the stars aligned and somebody bowed out. It was originally supposed to be a partnership. There were three guys that had ownership of the company, and then stars aligned again. One of the partners dropped out, bowed out of it. And Mike asked me if I was interested, and clearly I was having a momentary lapse of reason because I said yes.
Okay.
Again, a long series of bad decisions in rapid succession. Follow the bouncing ball, boys.
Well, I'm gonna just come out and say thank you, because I've actually already ordered several parts from you guys, and the process was pretty streamlined. Not to use a train on there, but it was very good. It was a good customer experience, right? That's the word you want to hear, right? And it was. So,
well, again, I have absolutely no social media presence. So if that's the word, that's the buzzword I want to hear, then great. I'm happy. Well, I will tell you this, that website is designed for a 68-year-old non-computer literate operator.
That's the way to build it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. If you are a tech savvy, I have every social media platform known to man or known to cyberspace, and you go to our website and try to do a very specific search for something, you will be sorely disappointed.
Well, I'll tell you what, that kind of really was great for me is that you have pictures for everything, and not just tiny little, I got to zoom into it picture. You have like pretty standard photos of everything. And for me, that's a huge plus, because sometimes you're looking for a part, or you think it's the part, and you're like, I don't know, is this the part or not? But if I could see a picture of it, yeah, I could tell if that's what I need. And sure. I think that's a huge bonus.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. That was one of the things, Mike was like, hey, look, we've got 21,000 photos on this FTP site. And I went and looked at maybe 300 of them. And I'm like, well, that's great. I don't know who took them, but we're not going to use any of them. they were less than ideal.
Gotcha. They're like 5 kilobytes, and they're like 200 by 200 resolution or something. Yeah.
It was kind of like some of the really early, it's kind of like some of the photos on the product finder for some of the really early PS1 and even horn and whistle equipped locomotives, where when you hover over them, it's just this big grainy mess. Because back in the mid 90s, digital photography was not what it is today. It's not like you can go to the Apple and buy a really expensive camera with a phone wrapped around it.
Yep.
You had a digital camera that was very expensive, and it still didn't take great photos. So yeah, it was a lot like that.
Gotcha. So you told us so we all know what MTH Parts is, and it obviously it's a fantastic site. Just to clarify for our listeners and obviously everyone out there, and even us, what don't you do?
So MTHpartsandsales.com is a completely separate company from MTH Trainz. One of the big misnomers out there is that MTH is out of business, and that's simply not true. MTH Trainz has continued on in business with a much smaller staff and a completely new to the model railroad industry, mind you. This is nothing new to the world, but to the model railroad industry, they don't print a catalog anymore. Everything is email based, right? They send out an email every week that says, hey, here's these new products that have been announced for this specific dealer, or here's what we're cataloging, and so on and so forth. And that's how the new products are disseminated to the customer base and the dealer base. But that's MTH Trainz. While we share the same building, in many regards, we share some of the same space. It is really, truly two different companies. Our focus is obviously parts, and it takes a lot of space to inventory parts. And once you sell them, being able to find them is, when you're talking 25,000 or 38,000 individual parts, it's really important to be able to find them once you've taken someone's money for them. So that was a month-long endeavor, June of last year, just first off, having to move them out of Columbia Gateway Drive over to Elk Ridge. And then, the movers did a fantastic job of cross-pollinating about, 1,400 parts and intermixing them with one another. So, nothing like going to the box for a Rail King Bettendorf truck and finding, tin plate railroad crossing signs and what else? I mean, just you name it, number boards and fuel tanks. And it's like, oh my God, what is this? So, it was a very grueling 16-hour days for 30 straight days in June. And we also don't have any air conditioning in the warehouse.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. To say we were ripe would be an understatement.
All right,
but so that's kind of, that's kind of, I forgot what the heck. What am I talking about, Matt? Actually, you know what? You don't have a job anymore. John, what am I talking about?
I think you're talking about how hot the warehouse is. I think that's the main driving point of this entire conversation.
Oh, well then, so we just want all the listeners to know that, we are so committed to making sure that owners and operators of MTH trains have parts to fix their stuff, that we suffered 16 hours a day for 30 days straight, June of 21, putting all those parts away. That's how committed we are to this endeavor.
I mean, you could make a billboard and put like "Mike is hot, buy MTH parts."
Yeah, I'm going to go with no.
Okay, well,
Now we could put one Mike is tall and one Mike isn't.
Okay.
Buy MTH parts.
Sure, if that works.
I like that.
And funny enough, all three of the three of us that own the company, our first names all begin with an M. And I really pushed hard for 3M Parts Emporium as the company name, but the other two guys just wouldn't go for it.
Gotcha.
That's funny. I like that.
Well, that's why we're the Matt and Matt podcast. It's all started with two Matts, and we're like, we need something catchy and something that people will remember. We're like, all right, we'll just make it Matt and Matt, and that's easy to remember. So,
wow, John, buddy. Fortunately for you, I got big shoulders if you need to cry after the podcast. I'll hold you.
Now Johnny came later. Let's just, I just want to make that, like that point. Like Johnny didn't come
not
until
Johnny come lately. It's Johnny come later.
Correct. Yes.
Got it.
It's okay. I get to blend in a little behind the scenes for the listeners. Whenever we don't have a guest, I'm usually J Matt, so I can feel like I'm part of this.
I appreciate you clearing that up for us on the MTH part side. I wasn't talking about that, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to the other Matt Z, and see what kind of questions he's got for you.
Sure. Hey, thanks, man. It's been fun.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Mike, I got to throw a quick +1 on the parts. Man, I've ordered parts from you guys. It's a breeze. I love it. I wish it was here 10 years ago. Let me tell you, it's fantastic. Really great job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We all do. We really are busting our rear ends to get stuff up there. The only real drawback that we're really up against is there's only two of us that are really entering parts into the system. Right. And even once a part's entered, it's got to get put away before it's able to be sold, So I don't know if you've seen or heard, or maybe you gotten one of our email newsletters about the wish list. But that wish list is such a phenomenal tool, not only for us, but for the customer, right? If there's you're looking for a number board for a Norfolk Southern SD40 and you find it, right? You find the part number, you find the photo, but it says out of stock. Just put in how many you want, click add. It'll ask for your email address. And, when we finally get around to putting the part away, you get an email that says, hey, this part you're looking for is in stock. And of course, me being me, I, threw a little snippet in that email that says, you better hurry, because we emailed everyone else who was interested too. but that's my twisted sense of humor. But that wish list really does a good service to the customer, because it saves you from having to come back and look once a week or every day, or whatever the frequency is. Once you've signed up for that wish list, once it gets in stock, boom, it's you get an email as soon as it's put away.
Very cool. So I wanted to transition off of the MTH side and talk about your prior experiences, I guess, if you want to call it that, to Train America Studios and
you mean when I used to get dressed for these types of events?
Sure. That's funny.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. All right. Let's start with Train America Studios. What was kind of like the backstory and what kind of happened with that?
Okay, so here we go. So I had Train America, right? We started out in '96. It was a retail train store, and then we eventually transitioned into doing some early mail order stuff. And at any rate, it was summer of '96. We were trying to get the store ready to open, and it was hot, and I took out some Gargraves track, and there was a Lionel command system there. And this is 96, right? I mean, this literally is the birth of Lionel TMCC. I think the only locomotives out at the time was like a Rio Grande SD50, a Boston and Albany Hudson, I think, and the C&O Yellow Belly Hudson were the only three locomotives that had shipped that had TMCC in it. So we take this TMCC system out, I take this Yellow Belly, I put it on the track and pull out the cab one, throw some batteries in it, and I start running the train. And I was like, holy crap, this is the cat's meow. Like there's a future here. Fell in love with it. So train store opens, and I've got this local guy that comes in. His doctor told him he had to find a hobby to relieve some stress. So he dropped about $4,000 on track and power, TMCC, and in that SD50, the Rio Grande SD50, that Yellow Belly Hudson. Takes it home. He's just having a ball. Comes in 2 weeks later and buys a bunch of MTH Premier equipment. And 2 days later, he comes back. He's got everything in his car. He wants to return all of it. And, I literally had just opened doing the train store thing on a shoestring budget. And I'm like, oh my God, I've since paid bills with the money that he paid for that product. So I scrambled, got his money together, give him his money back. And I said, a buddy of mine was standing there. I said, if somebody doesn't come along in 6 months and do something to fix this incompatibility issue between MTH, Proto Sounds, and Lionel Command Control, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. So a year goes by, and my buddy comes back, and he's like, so did you fix that compatibility problem? And I said no. So any rate, got with a local guy, introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Louis Niederlander, who was my chief engineer at Train America Studios for, 10 years. And we're still very good friends. Drove up to his house in up near Cleveland, and I said, I want you to make this talk to that. So a few months later, he had a circuit developed, which it was our very first product we made at Train America Studios, called a UCUB, Universal Command Upgrade Board. Basically allowed you to take Proto Sounds 1 and put our circuit board in there that was coupled with a Lionel receiver that would basically take out the DCRU or the Proto 1 bottom board, put our board in place. It would, take care of the motor driver and the smoke on off and the rear coil coupler and then the sounds. And suddenly you had an MTH product that was 100% compatible with TMCC. And that's kind of how Train America Studios started. It was just a hobbyist looking to solve a problem and turned it into a business. And then that morphed into, all the other licensees that signed on to Trainmaster or signed on with Lionel. And, the majority of those companies didn't have an engineering department like Atlas and Third Rail and Weaver. And we started started designing circuit boards for those guys to give them TMCC compatibility, and kind of grew from there.
All right. No, that was really cool. I was just curious on that. Now, let's say it continued. What do you think would be of Train America now?
Oh, probably nothing. Lionel was, back in the day, Lionel was very threatened by us at TAS, especially after we developed our EOB, Engineer on Board Speed Control, and started selling it to Atlas O. I'm not going to tell you what the numbers were, but they were very significant from in terms of what Atlas took from Lionel and diesel locomotive sales in that time frame, because they had EOB. EOB was compatible with non-speed control equipped AC motored locomotives, Odyssey locomotives. You still to this day, you can't lash two TMCC1 Odyssey locomotives together without throwing all the traction tires. You could take an Odyssey engine and an EOB engine, lash them up, and they'd run like they were made for each other. Even engines that didn't have speed control, EOB would run with those. So it was a really versatile system. And so at any rate, Lionel was pretty threatened by it, primarily because it was coming from us and not from them. And they basically copyrighted. They copyrighted everything. They copyrighted all of their command sets, all of their 9-bit command sets that came out of the legacy base, and they copyrighted everything that comes out of that DB9 RS-232 port. So there really was not much of a future on the horizon for TAS in terms of developing new tech, based on that alone. So where would it have gone from there if it would have continued going? I honestly couldn't tell you. I've never really thought about it. Right. Once I started at Lionel, I left TAS completely, started with Lionel, and ultimately brought all my TAS guys onto Lionel to replace the service tech staff. And, that doesn't really matter where it would have gone. Couldn't tell you anyway.
Gotcha. That's quite cool. So transitioning on to Lionel. Go ahead.
I had a question. I'm sorry. It's kind of disappointing that the industry couldn't really kind of agree on a universal command system, and it's definitely something that we brought up several times, and I mean several times on this podcast, just talking about having something universal like that. Especially with the way just O-Scale is built, and just to make it easier for people to kind of get into it and have something that's just universal that, hey, I need one remote and I can run all of the command control trains out there. So,
and part of that threat that I mentioned was, I don't know if you guys own any EOB equipped locomotives, but it only ever had 128 speed steps, right? And that was done so that it matched MTH. And so, before just, I don't know, maybe 2 months before I left TAS and went to Lionel, I was working with Dave Kriebel for the refinement of the DCS handheld, the commands that the TIU would send to the TMCC1 legacy or TMCC1 base for speed steps, because there was, long story short, when you turn the red knob on a cab 1 in 128 speed step mode, it takes the speed steps go up 2 steps at a time with the red wheel. But if you use the boost button, it would go up 1 step at a time. And there's actually code inside the TMCC1 command base that Lionel never ever used when it was just TMCC1, which was absolute speed step commands. And so I was working with Kriebel for the cable between the TIU and the command base to when the DCS remote would send speed step commands, that it would send absolute speed step commands to TMCC locomotives, which would have ultimately given you the ability to take an EOB-equipped TMCC engine and put it in a lash up with a Proto Sounds 2 locomotive and run flawlessly together. But like I said, that we were a threat, and the threat was eliminated basically by hiring me. Hindsight being 2020, I see it now. Then, yeah, I was too young and stupid.
No, thanks. Thanks for explaining that too. So,
sure.
But yeah, I didn't mean to just kind of keep that topic alive. But again, it was something that we had brought up before, and maybe one day, I don't know, maybe one day we'll get back into a singular, or not back into, but maybe we'll all agree on a singular kind of protocol when it comes to command control in scale units. So,
sure.
Model railroading in general, right? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to pinpoint this directly on O scale, because I mean, you can build a command system that could go in pretty much any of the scales, and it could all be the same thing. But I'll digress.
From a guy who took on the TMCC conversion market head on and lived it for far too long, all I can tell you is good luck to the guy that signs up to do that.
Yeah.
There's a significant amount of support that goes into that, especially with guys who, if it has any more than 0 wires, they struggle.
Gotcha. Johnny, you had something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to kind of chime in on the UCUB. That was something that I thought was so cool when I first found out about it. Listeners to the podcast and viewers of my channel will know I am a big daylight admirer. Is the nicest way to put it to myself. So I love the Proto 1 daylight. I actually acquired one from my buddy Sid. And the one I actually got from him originally had the UCUB in it. And I went on and on and on about like, oh, I wish I could have the sounds from the Proto 1 and still have it be somewhat command control. And he's like, oh, yeah, this one can do that. And I got really excited, and he immediately crushed those dreams. Like, well, it used to be able to do that because the boards are long gone now. I sold them off to another gentleman, and my disappointment was immeasurable, to say the least. But it is what it is. I said a couple.
Geez, Johnny, you should have called. I've got 15 or 20 of them sitting here. I know the guy that invented them.
I think Matt Z and I would go crazy with that.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think I brushed his teeth this morning.
But the fact that technology exists and was so instrumental in that is amazing. Like I said, I had no idea something like that even existed until recently. But yeah, just think it's really cool. And if, like I said, after I learned that opportunity had long departed since the time until I got that engine, I said some big boy words that night. But you live and learn.
Yeah, well, first off, if you're an SP guy, you shouldn't be throwing around Union Pacific terms. Just saying.
Maybe Matt R can correct me since he's the
Matt's going to get mad with you with that one.
So here's a great sidebar story for you. So my buddy Lewis was the engineer for Bill Benson over at Right of Way Industries when they started way back when, and they were at York one time in the yellow hall with that monster layout that filled up the gold hall. The layout filled up the entire gold hall at the York Fairgrounds, and they had this sign up announcing the new sound system for the Southern Pacific Daylight, and it says with authentic daylight whistle. And this is back before Lionel had even come out with rail sounds, right? This was the first onboard sound system for 3-rail trains in the marketplace. And Lewis had a guy walk up to him and says, "Well, I know what the daylight is, but what whistle does it make at night?"
Oh no!
Yeah, so it had an authentic daylight whistle. He wanted to know what the night whistle was.
Oh boy!
So,
oh, my poor heart.
I love that.
That's pretty funny. But no, real quick on the UCO and the Proto One, I'm just as big of a Proto One guy as anybody out there. And it's really cool to know that, if you still want to have the old sounds that have, command, there you go. It's your perfect opportunity for it.
There you go. Hey, not to mention the fact MTH Parts and Sales has bottom and top soundboards in every sound chip ever made.
That's true. And I've bought an extra for my Brill. When I got it, so I'm like, okay, why not? So I've been starting to do that now, so that's kind of cool. But moving on away from the TAS side, so with Lionel, what kind of got you into Lionel and kind of like your role in their company?
All right, so I probably shouldn't tell you this story, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because anyone who knows me knows that that's how I roll. So, not early on. So I went to York one time, and a guy handed me a flyer from this electric railroad company that had just literally, really all that John had at the time was just a flyer. And he was, I think it was his Mini Commander he was advertising. So he was in California. He didn't go to York. He just had someone handing him out. So when I got back to Ohio, I picked the phone up, called him, and I said, "Is this John?" He says, "Yeah, this is John Zahornicki." I said, "Hi, I'm Mike Reagan. I'm own Train America Studios. Just wanted to say welcome to the industry." And he said, "People in this hobby don't do that." And I says, "Well," I says, "I've got plenty of enemies. I don't need any more of those. I figured I'd just welcome you to the industry and have a friend." And he was kind of beside himself. He didn't know how to respond. And so we developed a relationship, just talking on and off, bouncing ideas off of each other. In fact, he did some development work for me, design work for me at TAS. I was at TAS. He did some design work for us out in California back when we were doing the layout control software, when that was starting to, well, I don't want to say starting to get off the ground. We were considering getting it off the ground. At any rate, so John and I were good friends, and he ultimately got involved with Legacy towards the end of the explosive relationship between Neil and Lou Kovach, Neil Young and Lou Kovach, and that was delaying the delivery of Legacy. So John was brought on by Neil to get Legacy to market. So when John finally got Legacy delivered, Jerry called him up and said, "Hey, you did such a great job getting Legacy delivered that I want you to take over the service department." And John says, "Oh, I'm not interested." Jerry says, "Well, it doesn't matter. It's your problem now. Goodbye." So John called me and says, "Hey, how would you like to take over the Lionel service department?" And I says, "Oh, hi, there's no way in hell I want your problems." And I hung up. And about 3 weeks later, he called me back and he says, "Well, we're willing to pay you this much." And I says, "I'm suddenly interested." And so that's how I got on at Lionel in a nutshell, because I was not someone that Lionel in that era would typically hire. Right? I was a known quantity in the industry. I had a really good reputation, and back in the day, and even to this day, Lionel's not real fond on bringing on trained people in, how do I want to put it, director roles, right? In authoritative roles. They want, I was definitely not the pedigree that Lionel typically looks for. But they got me as a result of my relationship with John, and the rest is kind of history.
No kidding. That's really cool. All right. So I wanted to touch on Lionel again, and I believe this is the end of my questions that I could think of right now. I may think of more as Johnny talks. I don't know, but was curious on the YouTube side of things. You had the Lionel customer service channel, and I always really loved those videos. What inspired those, and what was kind of the thought process with those?
I was bored. Honestly, those started rolling out very, I won't say very early, but so I moved the service department out of Michigan and I moved it down to Canfield, Ohio, right where my old TAS techs were. They were on payroll at Lionel. Brought them in, and we had 2-3 day turnaround on repairs, both warranty and non-warranty repairs. Between the four of us, including myself, if all four of us were to jump on a bench for one day, we could easily knock out 120 repairs in a day. There really is something to the experience you learn from taking another manufacturer's locomotive, gutting it completely, and starting over with your own TMCC electronics. That really hones you in on exactly what is wrong with a Lionel locomotive and how to fix it in the blink of an eye. And so that's So long story short, the parts department was up and running. All the parts were in Ohio. The new service parts website was launched. It was doing well. We were repairing trains at a pace that no one in the history of Lionel had ever seen before. And I like to be involved in things. I really hate to manage. I'm a horrible manager. I'm a far better doer and director. And so I was bored, quite frankly. And, we bought this, I bought this $100 digital camera from Best Buy, and I bought 2 sets of $30 lights from some place online. With the fancy umbrellas and everything. And for like $170, we set up this film studio in a spare room in the service building in Canfield. And we just started making videos. And I would basically record them all myself. I'd go hit the record button, run behind the table, take a deep breath, start the video. And then Phil Hall, who worked for me at TAS and subsequently Lionel, he would do all the editing and he'd just push them up to YouTube. And then ultimately we started bringing them into the website. And, Ryan Kunkel and I back when Ryan was doing social media for Lionel, we did this, I don't even remember, maybe 35, 40 piece video series on everything you ever wanted to know about building a railroad and using Lionel equipment, from conventional to TMCC switches. I mean, the whole 9 yards, the whole gambit, everything, even up to converting things like Atlas turntables to work off a mini commander to run it off your remote. I mean, there was pretty much no limit to what we were doing at the time. And I did it because I was bored. I mean, literally I'd go in the morning and make sure everything was copacetic with everyone on staff. Everything was good. I'd sit in my office and work on some part lists. And when I got fed up with it, I'd just grab Trainz and go make a video.
Well, I mean, you probably weren't that bored because, you did have that video on the fast track expander paste, right?
I was just thinking about that.
You know what? I was just informed now that we've got this whole supply line issue. I was just informed by the freight forwarder that container actually fell off the ship. It's somewhere in the bottom of the Pacific, which is why it was delivered. Yeah. And that's more than likely why the Pacific Ocean is rising.
Rip fast track expander paste.
Well, living the dream.
I loved it. Like everybody thought it was real. And like at the very end, it's like Happy April 1st. It's like, hello.
It's amazing what you can do with oatmeal and blue food coloring.
That's awesome.
That's really something.
I can't believe there were people that actually really thought that was real too. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah, I remember the folks that were in the New York City office. They got fuming hot when I did an April Fool's video. It was the turbo encabulator, but geared towards the legacy remote about how that worked, with drawn reciprocating dingle arms and Nova trunnions and, I don't know, several weeks later, I got this scathing email from the New York office about how I'm disseminating false information and confusing the customer. And I'm like, oh, that's right. You're in New York. You don't have a sense of humor. My bad.
There you go, Matt. Oh, Matt laughed, so it can't be all bad there.
But Matt's not the right pedigree for Lionel. Right? You're a train guy. You don't count.
Remember, I'm basically from Canada.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're closer to Canada.
I'm not in that part of New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. So was Neil. So you're good. You're good.
But like I said, those videos, I mean, they were really informative. Like you're talking with the Atlas turntable, those sorts of videos. Those were, oh man, I loved watching those.
They were really good.
You learn something new every day. You know what I mean? Every time I watched it, I always learned something new, even if I watched the video 5 times. You know what I mean?
I'll be honest with you. I actually go back to a few of those videos now and then, just kind of recap on something, or if there's something that I missed. They're, joking aside, they were really good.
No, that's all I had. So Johnny, go ahead.
Alrighty, I'll take the reins, and just kind of chiming in my 2 cents on the videos. That was definitely a big part of my childhood growing up and watch that. I remember sitting in the living room when my iPod Touch and not having a YouTube account. I just hit every single video about Legacy and put it in a giant playlist. And I think what suckered me in was I think you guys used the Daylight, the 4436 Daylight in the video, which would make me want to watch it even more as a kid. But I love those videos.
So really, you're saying if things go south for me in the train industry, I should become a dealer.
That's exactly.
And set a Pacific dealer at that.
Well, we're not talking about trains, though. I don't know how to lure you in with the gateway drugs.
But kind of looping back to where we started at the beginning, going back to TrainWorx. I just want to kind of poke at the stories you might have in regards to that. But kind of like just some general questions. First one I was really curious about, since you've worked on quite a few layouts over your time with them. Which ones do you personally enjoy working on more, display layouts or private layouts for a customer?
I like, the stuff that I build here in North Carolina is typically always private layouts. Look, I'm a scale guy. Most people don't know this, but I'm into ON3. I'm a closet lone wolf ON3 guy. I'm also a closet military modeler. I'm really a stickler for detail, and I really enjoy painting and weathering. So, anytime I can build a layout that's more geared towards the scale side of things, those are the types of layouts that I really enjoy working on. In the business requires me to work on everything, right? I've built standard gauge layouts, I've built tin plate layouts, and it's not that I don't enjoy it, but that's when it starts becoming a job for me, because I really struggle with tin plate. I really struggle with the fact that nothing is to scale, and you really can't get away with weathering tin plate without the customer getting exceptionally hot. So the really flashy colors and glossy finishes, deep down inside, I scream when I have to work on that stuff. If it's going to be weathered and it's going to be dry brushed and it's getting washes, and I've got a blank palette for what I want to do scenery wise. That's what I really like, being able to take a photo, and people, other than the third rail, people are like, damn, that looks like the real thing. That's what I really enjoy. I enjoy designing it. When I'm designing railroads for people like that, I see the scene as I'm dropping the track in place. That's the stuff I really enjoy. I shouldn't say every, but every scale slanted or scale-ish layout that we do, even if it's 3-rail and it's all 1/4 inch scale, everything's weathered. The track, I spent the entire day painting the track for this 10 by 30 layout. You don't want to know how many. There's 90. Well, let's see. I've got 90 29-inch raw straights. 60 of them are painted. All the switches, all the curves, the bumpers, everything else is painted. So I got a little more work for me in 96-degree weather tomorrow in Concord, North Carolina.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I couldn't even imagine what going through all that would be like, even working on my tiny little layout, trying to ballast a switch alone causes its own significant emotional event. So I can't imagine what that would be like.
Yeah, wait until you have to pick the layout up, turn it on its side, load it on a truck, drive it 2,600 miles, take it off, set it up, and realize you forgot to tape the opening and the DZ1000 and it's chock full of ballast that didn't get glued. That's an emotional event.
Oh, no. That's just nightmare fuel right there.
Oh, yeah.
But that actually leads me to my next question. So what is it like having to take a trek with a layout in tow? Do you have any fun road trip stories that you've got hidden away for us here?
Yeah, just stay off of I-20 through Louisiana is probably the best free with a layout in the truck. I don't know who. I'm pretty sure they contracted some Ohio road engineers and brought them down to Louisiana to pave that whole stretch of 20. Was taking a layout to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I thought for sure when I got to the hotel, like all the ballast would have been on the floor. That was bounced my head off the cab of that Penske truck. If it wasn't 100 times, it wasn't once. It was just absolutely horrific. But that's really the worst one. That layout that I delivered 2 weeks ago, that went up to Virginia Beach. Some of the roads in Virginia, I was really, but that was more of a tin plate standard gauge style layout. So there really wasn't much to bounce off of it, as it were. But that's really it. Most of the installs are pretty uneventful. If you build a rack and you strap it down to the truck properly, you don't have any problems. And you got to do ballast work when you deliver a layout anyway. When you put all of your track pieces in over the table joints, you got to go back through and ballast it and re-cement it. So, inevitably you'll have some sections where the ballast will pop up, but it's all part of the process. So it's not nearly as big of an emotional event as John ballasting a switch.
For sure. Matt Z, did you want to chime in there?
Yeah, like I said, I knew I'd think of something when you mentioned stories. So I got to ask customer service, TAS stories. You got any of those?
Oh, yeah, I've got way too many of those. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you this. That is where, if there was anything I learned prior, obviously I learned everything I know about TMCC at Train America Studios. So when I got to Lionel, it was easy. There was no learning curve. There was obviously a learning curve because, and here's the best part, right? I was a combat engineer in the Army, right? I've done demo, I've done landmines, I've done clearing minefields, setting up obstacles. I've done all that, but that doesn't translate necessarily to the corporate world because everywhere there was a landmine at Lionel, somehow I stepped on every single one of them. But probably the best lesson I learned at TAS was that I took with me to Lionel was when the customer says, I have a pink wire, the response is put it in a box and ship it to me because I'm not going to sit on the phone for 9 hours so that you can change all the wires around, make it wrong, and make it a worse repair for me to fix. I get it. There's users out there that want to fix their own equipment, but I can tell you far more stories than you care to hear about what folks have done to their product, attempting to fix it on their own, and what that has turned into in terms of in terms of money to make it right versus saying, okay, I can send this to someone who knows what they're doing, get it fixed right the first time. It's going to work reliably for a long time, and it's not going to cost me a lot of money. Versus, I got a pink wire. Okay, great. Newsflash. There's no besides the pickup being gray and ground being brown. There's no color coding standard for Lionel TMCC1 locomotives at all. So, great. You got a pink wire. I'm looking at a spool of blue wire. What else can we talk about? So that's probably the single biggest lesson I learned, because I can't even tell you how many hours, days, weeks, and months I spent on the phone with customers trying to help them wire up a product. Customer service is, especially in a technical field, and really TMCC is not all that technical when you compare it to everything else that's in the marketplace today. But whether it's TMCC or legacy or DCS, it really doesn't matter. When you're doing technical customer service with someone one-on-one is just painful. And from a service role, be it TAS or Lionel or wherever, it's really hard to quantify that investment of time to the bottom line, right? I mean, that's the hardest part. Okay, they bought my product. I really want to help them out. I'm going to take this time. Next thing you know, 3 hours have gone by. And what's going to happen at the end of the 3 hours? They're going to box it up, and they're going to need more parts than they would have when you started. So it's a bit of a challenge. But I don't want to bore you with those stories. Heck, one of the people I'm talking about might be listening, and I'm going to offend them, and that would be bad.
I can definitely relate, though, as somebody who has worked in the technical field for a really long time. Let's put it that way. Both in the support environment and even just presently, I build computers for people if they want them to, and taking people through steps, especially like when you're dealing nowadays, you can get a little bit fancier if you could do like a camera to camera session or something like that. But walking people over the phone and
having them describe something to you is just. It's not going to work. Yeah. It's not going to work. It's just, I mean, it's hard enough on the software side to assist people, but nowadays you got remote control and that really helps. From a hardware perspective, no way. Send it in. That's right.
That's right. That's like I used to tell people the legacy charging system works best in the OFF position.
That's right. I know all about that. Yep, me too. ON doesn't work very well.
Yeah, ON. I don't know what that stands for, but it doesn't stand for works.
Yeah.
I think I gave Matt R a heart attack when he came over to my layout for the first time, and he saw that I had it in the ON position. It drove him insane.
It did.
Yeah. I had a guy call me up at Lionel one time. His legacy remote was what was it? The remote was doing something, and I told him, I said, just take the side of the remote and smack it upside the side of a desk. And he said, what? I said, just take the remote and smack it upside the side of the desk. He's like, well, what if it breaks? I said, if it breaks, I'll replace it. Really? I said, yeah. So he said, hang on a second. He walks away, comes back. He's got the remote, smacks it upside the desk. Hey, I fixed it. Well, there you go.
Now, disclaimer, the Man Podcast is not responsible for anybody fixing their remotes by hitting them against the desk. So,
yeah, I'm not with Lionel anymore, so please, by all means. And they're not making it anymore, so yeah, probably don't want to do that now.
We call that percussive maintenance.
Percussive maintenance. I
like that terminology.
That's great. I love those stories. They're great. As a person who also does customer service and technical support, those ring true to my heart. I'm going to throw this last one in here, to kind of wrap things up a little bit, but I'm going to add a little bit of a twist. So, one, with all the experience you've had working with layouts, which section of the country do you enjoy modeling the most or working on the most? And something I'm going to throw a twist in there. Based off of our conversation tonight, can you guess which regions of US that the Matts and myself enjoy personally? I've never asked a question like this before, but I've had a really fun time talking with you, so I'm curious if you can guess it.
Okay, so my favorite, I like having the freedom to do what I want, but I would say I'm a fan of the West, right? Colorado, the mountains, right? Where the big rock work is, the impressive rock work is. That's probably my favorite to work with. Besides you can justify tunnels and sheer rock faces and retaining walls far better than you can in, say, Pennsylvania, New York. The Moffat Tunnel is far more impressive than, a concrete arch bridge in my mind, especially, when you're doing a layout. So let's see, John, you're a Daylight fan, so you're an SP guy. Matt R is probably a Union Pacific guy because I bought his Burlington Northern SD40s. Maybe a BNSF guy, but based on an earlier comment about John using big boy words, I'm going to go with UP. And the other Matt, you haven't said a single thing about the Trainz other than you like the videos. So you're a New York Central. I got no idea.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, take any of the East Coast stuff and throw 90s into it. Like I said earlier, Proto One and the early stuff. I'll take that all day long. So yeah, you're spot on.
So you're a Conrail guy.
Oh boy!
I guess. You're on the East Coast, modern
East Coast and 90s. Yeah, I guess.
And he's got chrome rims. Matt likes it.
Yeah.
And you were pretty spot on. I'm UP and Santa Fe. I don't go east of Indiana, like nothing, zero.
Gotcha.
I don't
gotcha.
go there.
Yeah, well,
I don't go that way.
Yeah, for 3-rail, I'm a BN guy. I was an HOBN guy when I was in high school, and I'm still a sucker for Burlington Northern, but it's got to be scale stuff. It's scale sized. I'm not the semi scale stuff does absolutely nothing for me. If only you knew how much semi scale stuff I threw away in customer service, you'd probably all start having nightmares about now.
Yeah, I'm still too, like, I can't. I've recently just started moving more into the transitional era, which is why I've been kind of like letting go of some of my more modern stuff. But like one of my favorite just sets that I have is the Lionel did the E8s with the 21-inch passenger cars and in Burlington Northern, and I absolutely just love those things to death. And those will be buried with me in my coffin, obviously, because I'll never let those go. But I'm a huge BN guy too. Love the Cascade Green.
Oh yeah, yeah, can't go wrong.
Yeah, that's good guesses. That was exactly spot on. So good points to you. Should have started awarding points on our podcast now, right?
Well, at least for the 43rd episode.
In fact, we'll call them Johnny Points. So, all right.
There we go. New segment.
So, Johnny, that's a great suggestion, except my guess now is that all of those questions are going to default to you. So you've got a lot of homework to do for your next guest because you can't ask them the same questions.
This is true.
I gotta do my research. Stay up till it's 4 a.m. and think of the perfect question to stump people, even though Matt said this isn't 60 minutes here and all that.
Providing you're not ballasting a switch. Because you'll be having nightmares then.
No, it's a significant emotional bend is the best way to phrase it. But yeah, that was awesome. Thank you for the laughs. I really appreciate it. And I'll hand the reins back over to the Matts if they want to add anything in there. I think Matt Z wants to chip in there.
Well,
Yes, I
hey,
do.
Tony, congratulations on being the sole employee now in the Matt and Nat podcast.
I am the CEO and all the staff. Oh, that means I have to edit this. Oh gosh, Matt, you want your job back?
Sure, I'll take it back.
So real quick, I just, like I said, think of questions as we go, of course. So I know that Matt, you asked this question a lot, and you did not ask this tonight, so I'm going to ask it. Mike, where do you see the model railroad hobby in the next 10 years?
That's a really good question. I was with Scott Griggs down in Atlanta a couple months ago, and was working with his group of technicians, and somebody had asked me a question which is similar to that. I think the question was, what's the ratio of three rail hobbyists out there, in terms of age demographics. And I said, and I told him that he will never know, and I'll never know. You take guys like myself, people from my generation, I'm 49 years old. People from my generation typically don't belong to social clubs like the generation before me or the generation before them, right? Train clubs, Knights of Columbus, Rotary, those types of things. You guys most likely all have social media accounts and are active on social media. I don't, that whole thing just passed me by. I never did any of that. So there's a lot of customers, a lot of young customers out there that have families. They're young, they're not choking up $7,000 in pre-orders every time a catalog comes out, but they're buying, right? They're buying off the internet. They're buying from a very small mom and pop shop. They're buying off the secondary market, where things are a little bit less money. So what's the future look like? I think the hobby will still be here. Will it see the same amount of new product coming out like the flurry it's been for the last 2 years? No, I don't see that. At some point, the financial status in America is going to change in terms of what's the right word? Extra money to spend on your hobbies. So I don't think the number of products people are going to be buying brand new are going to outweigh the number of used products people are buying or secondary market products people are buying. It's still going to be here. There's still going to be manufacturers. I just think that the offerings that the offerings in each catalog are going to get smaller. Especially looking 10 years down the road. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's the direction it's going. In the model railroad industry as a whole, really all hobby industries, but certainly ours, has seen a giant boom in the last 2.5 years as a result of COVID, right? I mean, people staying home, people making more of an investment in something they can do at home, and the model railroad hobby is ideal for that. Now that that's slacking off a bit and things are changing, it'll be good for a while. Inflation's definitely kicking our butts right now. So that's obviously going to have an impact on future spending. But will the hobby be here? Yeah, it'll be here. Will it be the same players? It's going to see the same transition I watched happen when I went to my first York show in 1993 was my first York show. I was a kid, and there were all these adults, most of which, a large percentage of those adults are no longer with us, right? And there's been people to replace them, and then there's been people to replace them, and it will continue. But I think most people are going to do it more in a lone wolf setting and a social media setting than they will in any type of large clubs like the Jersey High Railers or the larger clubs like that. So we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. And I have spoken.
That was a good answer. Really, really, that's great answer.
All right. Well, we'll probably just start wrapping it up then. So I'll just say, just right out, Mike, thanks for coming on the Johnny podcast, which is what it'll be called now. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We appreciate your time. And just hopefully you know, in the future, we'd love to have you back on as well. You are just fantastic to talk to, and you're just kind of overflowing with knowledge, and you're definitely the type of person that we like to have on here just to casually talk about the industry.
If it's any consolation, my eyes are brown too.
Okay. But with that said, let's just take us out. Mike, and like we do for everybody on our podcast, all of our guests, we want to make sure you can. I know you said you don't have too much social media stuff, but feel free to let people know about TrainWorx and the MTH parts.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, if you want to keep up on what we're doing at TW TrainWorx, the best place to go is just blog.traindame.com. It's Dorsey's blog. She's constantly posting pictures of current jobs in the shop, installations. Not too many pictures from my shop because I've got Jeep parts everywhere and then train layouts. So my background, the backgrounds for the stuff going on in this shop are not the greatest, but more so in Dallas. And then, just mthpartsandsales.com. The sole source for MTH parts. And, I've only got another 10 years worth of work to do before all the parts are actually in the system and available for purchase. But, hey, wish list it.
Johnny, how about yourself?
You can find me at Audamus on YouTube. That's AUDAMUS. You can find me there screaming at inanimate objects, getting hit in the face, and occasionally I'll make a video. I swear I do make videos at some point in the year. You can also find me on Instagram at Audamus_Trainz and on Facebook with the same name. You'll find me posting there a lot more frequently, though it looks like I've been hitting a dry spell recently. You can also reach out to me on Instagram and on the Matt and Matt Discord, where you can find me in the voice chats and looking at everybody's posts and the text chats.
Matt Z, how about yourself?
Real quick, Mike, really big thanks. This was a lot of fun. I really had a great time tonight.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a good time. Good time. And I think the next video that Johnny filmed should be me coaching him on how to ballast a switch.
I would love that.
That'd be something.
Yeah, I want to quickly hop in real quick, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. My sides hurt from laughing so much, so I hope we can have you as a guest again soon.
Well, thanks. It really has been a lot of fun. And someone's got to put the fun in funeral.
I love that. Alrighty. So you can find me on YouTube under Matt-TrainLover9943, Facebook under the same name, Instagram as Matts.hobbies. And like Johnny said, I'm in the Discord. Usually I'm editing a sound set because, that's what I do. And I have a fun time with those, but that's that for you.
And yeah, just to kind of bank on the Discord, I know I didn't mention it in the beginning, but folks, it's free. Doesn't cost any money. You click a link, you check a box that says, yeah, I'll be a good person. And bam, you're in the Discord. You're talking to other people in the industry, a lot of big YouTubers. You're talking to us, talking about like we did tonight with Mike, just talking about the industry, posting pictures, posting photos. It's a fun time. It's a great time. That link will be in the show notes. You just click it. Like I said, it's easy. As for myself, you can find me on YouTube at West Chicago Model Railroad. I'm on Facebook under the same name. And then I'm also on Instagram under WCMRR. And one last thing, we will be answering all of the questions and talking about some of the reviews on our next episode. So we're giving it an extra episode for folks to get in your information. So please, if you have any comments, please email us. Link will be in the show notes. And then, of course, please leave us a review on any of the podcasting websites you can. It really helps the podcast. Lets people know that you like us. And we, again, appreciate everybody out here that listens to our podcasts. we're here doing this because of you. You guys drive us to make these podcasts, and we love doing it, and we want to keep on doing it. So thank you for that. And with that said, everyone have a wonderful night.
Take good care.
Take care, everybody.
All right, be good, guys. Thank you.